Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with our exploration of the classical music genre, this time looking at some Vivaldi. Now the interesting thing here is that John Williams is tied to this performance. We're going to be looking at Concerto for Lute in D minor. So, let's dive into this and see what John Williams and Vivaldi have in store for us today. I love the little it's very light and bouncy. Oh! So a layered version of the core motif here. Oh! A little taste of call and response. Not going to play off of it though. The sheer volume contrast. I love those half-step rises. The volume control is just phenomenal. Largo, yep, slowing things down. Very interesting. It never quite resolved the way that I expected to. There we go. Oh, darkening things a bit. So we did finally have a resolution at the end of that last section, but it was entirely to help push to this next section. It's so warm. So we've continued to push in less known directions. Oh, this kind of brings some of the positivity back from the beginning. We've explored mystery, discontent. All right. We have one more movement after this, or are we... Oh, back to Allegro. It's just a very playful back and forth. I just realized he's the only person without sheet music. They keep teasing this idea of call and response. They never go into it though. Well, I certainly have my favorites as far as the three movements there. The last one is fun, but I find it less engaging than the previous two. With movement one being, I think, more technically engaging. There's lots of really neat ideas and technical components to that. And movement two is more emotionally engaging. Movement three does bring back some of the harmonic structure from movement one. It brings back the tempo from movement one. So we get a little bit of this coming full circle, but it's not as exploratory emotionally or technically as the other two movements. And it acts more of a way of crafting a finale to the piece, more so than adding on to the interesting ideas and exploring something that is, at least to me, ear catching. Whether it is from a performative side or an emotional harmonic side, I just never really connected with that final movement, and I am glad that it was the shortest of the three. Now, the first movement it's all about cadence. It's about stress and release. There's a lot of this. If you go back and listen to that first movement, you'll find that there's this constant push towards sort of what something is, sort of just a state of being, and then transitioning to tension or expansion of that idea before returning back to that core idea. It's kind of what's at the center of the line. It's about this push and pull, and we can find that in a few different ways. We can find it in the expansion of the harmonic line. We can find an expansion of the melodic line. We can find it in expansion of layers. There's so much of the first track that is just a single cello, the piano, and the guitar, and then we will contrast that with the full group. And then once we've done that for a little bit, we bring it back down. But even if you listen to the solo guitar line, you'll find that you'll hear these moments where we kind of just exist as an idea is. We sort of state it plainly, and then we expand upon it, and then we return back to that plain statement. The entirety of the first movement is this push and pull, and there's some cool ideas within it too. And we have the column response that's sort of alluded to at times. The guitar will play something, and then the strings will echo it, and then that's it. We have the call, the response, and then it's over, and we never revisit it until moments later. A couple of minutes, we do it again, just the one response though. I really would have liked to hear this expanded on a little bit more, but I suppose in the context of a lute concerto, it doesn't really make sense to bring in the strings for anything more than what's necessary for them. And this is actually something that's prevalent through the entirety of this performance, is that this really is a solo for the guitar where the strings and piano accompany them. Now, the accompaniment sometimes can just be the chords underneath, with a single cello off on the right and the piano in the center, and then the guitar playing on top of it. That's a lot of the moments. But when the entire group comes in, it's usually to support the guitar line, to expand it harmonically, sometimes expanding it. Well, they'll play a simplified version of the motif while the guitar gets to expand musically on it. But it's usually just that. It's all foundational. There's very few parts where the strings get to take any sort of lead role on this. And so, like I said, going back to the call and response part, maybe it would never have worked out as far as the intentions of this piece. In order to, if they had put more emphasis on the strings collaborating with the guitar, more so than having it just pretty much be it's a lute solo right here. 10 minutes of lute playing. Everything else is to support it. And this is true not just in the first movement, but also the second and the third. And if you go back and listen to them again, the only one who gets to have any spotlight is the guitar. if the other string instruments get to play melody, it's exactly what the guitar is playing or the bass form of what the guitar is playing. So the spotlight can still be on the guitar in one way or shape or another. So again, depending on how you're coming at this, I would have liked more playfulness. But at the same time, this is a guitar solo with accompaniment. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for the accompanying parts to be in the spotlight at all in here. It's actually kind of interesting that they get to do that in the few places that they do. And so this takes me to the second movement, which I think plays a nice contrast to the first, whereas the first was brighter, lighter, more energetic, very bouncy, had a lot of fun, like quick hammer-ons and pull-offs on the guitar in order to create these fast, more legato style playing moments. And it's very bright and bouncy and expressive. Here we enter into something a bit slower, which makes perfect sense given what these two sections were labeled as. Movement 1 was Allegro, technically Allegro Giusto, but we're going to leave that second part off. Allegro is more of a standard time for meter. The second one was Largo, which is slower, and we return back to Allegro, which is more standard. So this idea of slowing down could already have anticipated if we had seen the movement title prior to the movement actually starting, but it is something that's a bit more pensive and withheld. We move from the very staccato playing through a lot of the first movement, which is very sharp, short notes, not long drawn out notes. And here we're moving towards that legato, drawing out notes, allowing them to ring out and hold them. This is where we got to see more vibrato playing from John Williams. And really bringing an expressiveness out in the playing other than, a short, sharp brightness and bounciness to it. What I liked too is that not just the playing style leaned into this, but also the emotional expressiveness. This tended to be more pensive and introspective for me. And I think part of that comes through the chord progression, sure, but also from the lack of instrumentation. Even when the larger group came into play, it was still quite a bit quieter than the first movement. It feels lonelier, it feels more isolated. And a lot of this comes down to just the quietness in it. What's very interesting here, though, is that we can begin to see a reduction of harmonic focus in that the first movement has longer drawn out chord progressions. There's lots of things going on with that. Here in the second one, though, we have dropped down from, we occasionally have 8-bar progressions. We have 4-chord progressions, and at times even 2-chord progressions, just bouncing back and forth between 2 chords, a home and a tension. This reduction of the harmonic property, I think, is something that innately I felt but didn't quite understand at the time, because it does begin to point us towards the third movement. The third movement is all about bouncing back and forth between 2 ideas. It's not quite as expressive, but it's definitely fun. It's capturing the harmonic variability that we saw, or the reduction of harmonic variability that we saw in the second movement, and it's paired with the bright, bouncy playfulness, more upbeat ideas that we saw in the first movement. Now, I can't remember if there are any specific, like one-for-one motifs pulled over for this final section, but it definitely captures the vibe and essence of that first movement, just with less variability. The first movement liked to put a lot of spotlight on the guitar. They got, 40 seconds plus of just them playing with the cello and the piano, really getting to focus on that before the rest of the band or the rest of the group came in to support the idea. And then they would leave and they'd get almost, another solid minute of just taking the spotlight there and running with it. And here at the end, we've sort of returned to that, but the amount of time that we spend with the solo guitar is smaller. And through that, we get less of an emphasis on the guitar and more of an emphasis on the group. But of course, we're still looking at this idea of accompaniment, where the group itself is still there solely to support the lute solo. And so I think that's part of the reason why it felt a bit empty to me, is that we didn't spend enough time with the melody. And when everything came together, I saw just the pendulum swing between two chords. And I don't know, it just never really clicked with me in a way that the dexterous and intricate harmonic ideas from movement one, or the emotionally deep and resonant elements of movement two connected with me. And here we kind of got a stripped down version of both. We got the reduced harmonic palette from movement two, but we had a reduction in melodic focus, taking parts of movement one, but compressing them down. I never really felt like we had spent a lot of time with any of the ideas in the third movement. And maybe that's the point of it too. To take that vibrant bounciness from the first movement and explore it in a condensed way, to appreciate the moment for what it is, more so than diving into technicality, more so of instead of diving into technicality, more so looking at form and function of the idea. How can we take this down and almost in a minimalistic way, strip it to its core components and still capture so much of that vibe? And through that lens, I think the third movement works, but I'm not entirely sure that that's the authorial intent for it either. It's just a gut feeling I have trying to find some sort of meaning for that third movement. This was very fun though, and honestly, it's kind of a blast to see John Williams playing, especially at this level. The technical expertise on display, both in the emotive side of playing the guitar and the technical side of some of the faster ideas that we saw in the first movement, was very cool. Like I said, I've really only ever seen him conduct anything. So this was certainly a treat, and the performance itself was gorgeous and lovely. But these are just my thoughts on Vivaldi's Concerto for Lute in D minor, performed by John Williams at the Royal Alcazar Palace. Do I know who the group is? Orchestra Sinfonica de Sevilla. All right, wanted to give them some credit as well, because they did a fantastic job playing alongside John's solo work here. But what are your thoughts on this? Did you enjoy it? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said, or correct me on if I misspoke about anything? Please put all of that stuff and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.